Hello everyone, welcome to week 3. This week we're going to read about and explore the technological context of social entrepreneurship and begin work on project 2. Chances are that you have in your pocket computing and networking power we couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. A lot of my work focuses on digital environments and the ways in which technology is changing the way we write, communicate, play, engage, explore, share, and more. Last July, less than a year ago, NPR had a morning story about the fact that 24 million Americans in rural areas especially don't have access to broadband internet service. The reporter described families where a parent would have to drive their kids to the public library to access the wireless from the parking lot before school so students could turn in their homework because they didn't have internet access and they couldn't do so from home. As of April 2018, the last time Facebook published company statistics, there were 1.45 billion daily active users on Facebook. If Facebook were a country, it'd be the largest on earth. But based on World Bank statistics, only 7% of the population of Burundi has access to electric power, not the internet, power. 8% in Chad, and about 80% in India. As you look at the cases for this week, specifically, I'd like you to think about how social entrepreneurial approaches might help us to address issues related to powering and connecting the world. Our focus this week is on the technological context of social entrepreneurship. But before I introduce Project 2, I want to talk a bit more about the creative context of social entrepreneurship, because I think creativity is perhaps the most important resource social entrepreneurs are able to tap into. I want to share a few creativity cases. These aren't necessarily social entrepreneurship examples, but they showcase the creative moves and approaches required to engage social entrepreneurial work. My first example takes us to Florida and back to the 1960s, and a coach wondering about why his players and how his players were being affected by the heat, and why specifically his players would drink and drink and drink and drink water during games, but weren't peeing. This coach connected with some medical sciences researchers on campus and analyzed how it is the body metabolizes nutrients and what nutrients are ideal for athletes during competition to keep them healthily hydrated. And Gatorade was born. Since the early 2000s, Gatorade has been included in PepsiCo's top 5 mega brands. Gatorade was, in 2012, number 86 on Forbes' list of the world's most powerful brands. In 2013, Gatorade held 75% of the worldwide sports drink market, and in 2015, Gatorade celebrated its 50th birthday. So how is this a case of creativity? The coach saw the world slightly differently. He thought to ask questions that at the time were kind of odd questions, and he looked for others to collaborate with to address these questions. My second example is from research that 3 of my colleagues, other professors at MSU, are doing. Their work focuses on social media and epidemiology. And epidemiology is the tracing or study of the spread of illness. Their study started when they realized 2 things. First, foodborne illnesses are often officially reported when it's really late, after dozens and sometimes thousands of people are really sick. And second, people tend to overshare information on social media. So they've created a web-based bot software that scours Facebook updates and Twitter posts for instances of foodborne illness. How does the bot work? It uses natural language processing, and it can recognize differences in context. So, for instance, if someone tweets, "I had Taco Bell and it was sick," the bot will analyze and likely ignore it. But if someone tweets, "I had Taco Bell and I'm really sick," the bot will archive it to a feed. How is this a creativity case? These researchers see our everyday communication tools as more than just spaces to communicate. They're spaces where we can ideally intervene in serious outbreaks of illness. My third example has to do with sweeping. Up until the 1990s, sweeping hadn't really changed much. Brooms had a bit. Most brooms today are made of plastic and synthetic fibers, but the act of sweeping the floor isn't much different. This changed in the late 1990s when Procter & Gamble realized they needed to innovate in the cleaning market. They hired ethnographers to go into people's homes and watch them clean. That was their job. They watched people clean their houses. This project had gone on for like 6 weeks. Everyone was getting frustrated. Imagine watching everyday people clean their houses for weeks. The researchers hadn't really seen anything innovative until they observed a woman in her 80s sweeping her floor. As the ethnographers watched, she swept the floor with her broom. She swept the mess up in a dustpan, but then she dampened a paper towel at the sink, stuck it to the end of the broom, and used it to pick up the last bits of dirt and dust from the floor. About a year later, the original Swiffer broom hit the market. I like this as a creativity case because it reminds me that all creativity requires research, looking, watching, and listening. So Gatorade, the foodborne illness app, and the development of the Swiffer are creativity cases. Next, let's look more specifically at creative processes. In middle or high school, you might have had a poster like this hanging in your classroom. This is a clear, succinct way to represent the writing process. First, you invent or pre-write. You create outlines, you make notes about what you want to write about. Then you write, you create a draft, then you revise it, and then you edit it before sharing. This is tidy, but I don't think it's accurate. Most writers edit across the writing process. Most writers pre-write and invent and go back and forth across writing and revising and editing. I recently created an image for a book I just wrote, presenting a romanticized notion of the media composing process. So let's say this person is working on a short public service video for a community organization. We might think that she gathers clips, writes a script, selects music, then sequences them together. Realistically, though, it's a lot messier than that. When I put together these weekly class videos, I have some of the music picked out. I have a script that I write and I revise. I gather images, and then I have to sift through them and figure out what I want to use. I find or rip video and audio clips to include. I record myself. I re-record myself. I edit the music. I do some screencasting. I edit the screencasting. I tweak my script. I re-record. This isn't a clean, linear process. If you do a search for creative process online, you'll find images like this and this. You might find quotes from famous people like J.J. Abrams, who has said, "The creative process is a bit like driving in the fog. One has a sense of one's destination, but the journey may end up taking some surprising twists and turns." You'll find tons of prescriptive suggestions related to, say, convergent and divergent thinking, or Charlie Gilkey's steps: preparation, incubation, illumination, implementation, or Jessica Stillman's 4 stages of creativity: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. James Taylor offers 5 similar stages: preparation, incubation, insight, evaluation, and elaboration. Tiffany Schlane's list is a bit more extensive. She argues that creativity starts with the hunch. You think you've got an idea, but you're not sure where to go with it. Then you move into talking about it, talking the idea, working with people, maybe doing some brainstorming. Then you become the sponge. You sponge up ideas from everywhere to help nurture your idea. Then you build, you create, you make, you do. Then you get confused. And everyone faces a moment in a project where they lose sight of their goals or question their ideas. So you step away. You take a breather. And then often you come back to your idea and realize how much you love it and how smart it is. And she argues that there's breakthroughlation. Many, many small breakthroughs happen across creative projects. You revisit your notes, you go back and review. And importantly, you know when you're done. There are some fantastic representations of the daily schedules of the famously creative, like Maya Angelou. Interestingly, she did most of her work in hotel or motel rooms as she traveled and by preference. I have a colleague who, when he needs to get a significant amount of writing done, like a draft of a book, will check into a hotel for a week or 2 because he can work there without distraction. This is Beethoven's daily schedule. And Darwin's a bit more varied than Angelou's or Beethoven's. Tchaikovsky's. And an overview of all of the daily routines of famous creative people that this artist created. There are two things I find pretty interesting about these. First, they're almost all white guys of the same demographic class and generally the same time frame, except for Maya Angelou. Second, all of these people did the majority of their work, or all of their work, before the internet and the web and social media. I wonder what sort of influence these technologies have had on today's famously creative people. There's a great BuzzFeed article by ARIANNA REBOLINI on the daily habits of creative people. She suggests they get moving, they take naps, they daydream, they collaborate, they take risks, they make and stick to a routine, they explore, they pay attention, they fail forward and forgive bad work, and they take time to be alone. So I encourage you, the next time you're nurturing an idea or working on a piece of homework or a project at your internship, take some time to reflect. Think about how you creatively approach a task. We tend to romanticize creativity and think that creative people are just born creative and jump out of bed every morning with creative ideas. That's not the case. Creativity is something that has to be nurtured and designed, just like entrepreneurial thinking. So while you're reflecting on your own creative capacity and processes this week, we're going to be exploring the technological context of social entrepreneurship. As you can imagine, digital technologies and tools and spaces have absolutely transformed the ways in which we build and make change in the world. We'll read a piece by Ashoka. Ashoka is, according to their website, the largest network of social entrepreneurs worldwide, with more than 3,500 social entrepreneurial fellows in more than 93 countries. Then we'll read a chapter by Blake Mycoskie and learn more about Tom's shoes, which I've mentioned in class before. Technology is one resource that social entrepreneurs rely on, but there are many other resources critical to successful initiatives. And in this chapter, Mycoskie talks about the technological and other resources he leveraged when launching Tom's. The next three pieces are cases, and they're all short videos that help explain our contemporary social and digital media context. This is the only week we won't have an MSU homegrown case for class. Finally, for this week, we have two sparks. The first is a profile piece, which is the type of writing I'm going to ask you to do for Project 2. The second is an example of leveraging technology for social good. For Project 2, you're going to be doing some profiling and representing. You're going to identify a social entrepreneur you find interesting, research and find out more about them, their background, their education, their commitment, their goals, their work, and write a short article formatted profile piece. If you know someone who does social entrepreneurial work, you can interview them and write the piece based on the interview. If you don't know someone and there's someone else you want to profile, you can do research and create a research-based piece. The full assignment and some really, really helpful examples for Project 2 are saved on D2L in the Assignments and Dropboxes folder. We're covering a lot of ground this week. Please email me if you have any questions about the readings, the cases, or the sparks, or any questions as you get started on Project 2.